important, the workers or the technology? The second one is, should a company adopt technology to fit their people and processes, or change the people and processes to fit the technology? What do you think?
Nice.
I'm not worried about the people or I'm worried about my technology and stakeholders and shareholders that I have to talk to. So I'm not so much I worry about the people to an extent that we take care of them. I'm not worried about that picture past that, because, and we've said this on many shows, you have to worry about the people you're displacing. So if we displace somebody, we make sure we worry about them. But as I grow a company with AI, I'm not worried about who I'm displacing. I'm just worried about how I take care of them.
I think you got to think about the symbiosis between the technology and the people. I mean, in terms of the second point of your question around whether you adapt the technology to the people or the people to the technology and the processes, I think the best route is the best way forward is actually combining what makes us human with the technologies as they develop, because as they develop, it can emphasize what it means to be human in terms of our creativity, in terms of our brainstorming, in terms of our empathy. And until we're completely replaced by robots, I think it's the right way forward to think about the people as it relates to the technology and consider them both at the same time.
And you know what? Before we go on to the next thing, hold on one second. Now let's officially start the show.
This is True OF Entertainment.
Welcome to the Lost Dollar Business Club, where we talk about business, and not just business. We talk about what makes businesses go up and what makes businesses go down. If you're interested in businesses, this is where it is. We talk about the global economy. We talk about global politics. We talk about everything and anything business related that affects your life on a global scale as well as a local scale. And don't miss after the show, Lost and Found. Well, now we're officially starting. We should welcome our guest, Michael Collins. Michael, thank you for being here.
Author of Dismantling the American Dream, How Multinational Corporations Undermine American Prosperity. And you wrote a great book talking about how these multinationals in particular chose to favor their shareholders over all stakeholders and short-term profits over society and country, which you say they're still doing it.
Now AI over
they're still doing it, and AI is going to give them another big boost. But back to the question of which is more important, the workers, the people, or the technology. Back many years ago, when Toyota came in and the Toyota production system was all the rage, Toyota said, the chairman said, we build people before we build cars. We believe our success begins and ends with our people. We want a system that adapts to the way we work, not to have to adapt to the way an existing piece of software works. I don't know whether Toyota still believes that, but that was their mantra 20 years ago. What do you think?
I think 20 years ago they had the robots, so they adapted the robots to help produce more cars to help their team. I think with AI coming down the pike, AI is making it right now. AI enhances everything you do. Whether you make a movie, whether you do this, whether you write an article, whatever, it enhances. So right now, let's say for the next 5 years, teaching your staff or your people to use AI only enhances your staff as well as your business. I think when we get to the 2030s or the 2040s, maybe a little different. I think AI is going to pretty much run everything. I mean, that's kind of where everybody's heading. If you look at all the technologies, if I look at the AI companies we invest in, they're trying to make it easier for people to work and do, but some of them making cognitive AI that's going to think and do. So I think when you get to that point, I don't know. I think AI is going to look at us as kind of useless. So,
Well, I mean, yeah, if we just focus on the non-physical world, yeah, it's gonna create a lot of disruption. But
right.
we live in a physical world, and AI, is not gonna be manufacturing steel, right? It'll help maybe the process, but it's not gonna do that. I mean, you can throw it in all the data you want, but at the end of the day, you still got to pour steel, you got to melt it, you got to get coke out of the earth, right? So I think it's going to be disruptive to the middle class. It's going to freaking destroy it, right?
Right.
And we're going to create a lot of inequality because the idea that it just enhances, no. We know that business is rapacious for profits, and if they can eliminate a job for a piece of software that does, that generates a report or writes. Of course, we'll get mediocrity at a huge level because everybody will be using the same thing, and then they're like, "What? Okay." So, it's going to be interesting, but I think it's very detrimental to very high paying service jobs. And you know what? You know, you Steve talks about investment banking. Yeah, that could disappear easily. You
Yeah.
don't need a whole bunch of bankers. Just put a little button and boom, you got a presentation. You throw in a bunch of data, and out you come. Maybe you need some salesmen, but hey, we could probably produce better salesmen with AI, with less biases and more confidence. So,
But
And
we do that now.
even more empathy. Actually, there was a study done on AI's bedside manners and in a medical institution, and people only interacted through like MyChart, the Epic health system, electronic medical record system. So they had the doctors respond through emails, through text messages, and they had AI respond. And people thought the AI was more empathetic and had better bedside manners than the doctors themselves.
Yeah.
Well, that's a generational thing because when I was a kid, doctors were bedside manner. Now, doctors don't have any brains, let alone bedside manner. They're dumber than a box of rocks. Back in the day, I think that doctors actually had to go to a real medical school, get a real degree, and actually have a bedside manner and know. Now they have their iPad, and if they don't know, they're just like clicky, 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 clicky. Look,
Part of that
they
is
don't have a bedside
that
manner.
we've financialized our entire society. So,
Right.
And we got, what do we have? We have, go to any medical practice and they're now becoming a part of big groups. And who's behind that? It's freaking VCs. I don't know what they add. All they add is a little time slots to, they're just extracting. They add no value. Right. It's just pathetic, but the doctors sell themselves and they think they're getting a better deal, but they're just becoming robots in themselves.
Well, here's the other question for Michael, because last time he was on, we talked about the most favored nation status with China. China's catching up. I mean, like it's a neck and neck race between AI, if you will, in North America and AI in China. So I think that also is going to determine a lot of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on
That's
that, Michael?
Well, I do, but I would like to go back to something fundamental here, and that is there's this tendency with all this AI as I look at it through in the media that if you could write a software program for any problem, it will be resolved. And there's a lot of examples. The one that really bothers me right now is the one on predictive maintenance, where they feel they can write these predictive maintenance software programs, and the production line, the automatic line, will somehow just keep clicking away and it'll all be solved. I'm very close to this still. And when in my years of building equipment for automatic production lines, my favorite saying was there seemed to be no end to what the large corporations would buy in space age equipment, but they never followed it up with the kind of training. And so we as OEMs were always in trouble being clear out here in Vancouver, Washington, it seemed that we were always having to send a serviceman to the other side of the country overnight, to try to resolve it. They have not caught up to it. And so my feeling or my statement is the predictive maintenance is only going to be as good as the employees. And I could make a long case out of the fact that it has not caught up. We still, to this day, do not have enough trained people trying to maintain and repair and operate these big automatic production lines.
But
Well,
do
yeah.
you think
You need
Do we
fewer
think-
and fewer. Oh, I mean, you need fewer and fewer people to manage these lines to begin with, right? The number of people required to maintain these massive machines are fewer over time, right?
unless you're
That's
at
right.
Boeing?
Unless you're at Boeing. Yeah.
Unless you're at Boeing, that's a different story. So, but don't we think possibly as AI gets more, let's just say, intelligent, and like always creates like, and it creates robots, and it creates this, and it creates that, whether it's in 5 years or 50 years, the AI will train itself at some point, and the maintenance of it will just be done by, like, so you have this big robot, just say, that's putting together. We'll use Boeing because you're in Washington State, so we can pick on Boeing. Putting in doors and screws, and the machine knows it has to put in the 4 bolts. And if something goes wrong, the little AI dog, the little drone will come, and whatchamacallit, the little drone will come and fix it.
Charlie,
So the little drone will come and fix the bigger machine to make sure that it continues to run. And at some point, I would think humans become obsolete.
Come on, that's just
How far are
fantasy
we
land.
talking about that?
It's just fantasy land.
let me address that issue. You have something like a great big palletizer at the end of the line.
Right.
Through the vibrations of operating the machine, the photocells get out of whack.
Right.
Somebody has to come up and physically watch them and move them.
Okay.
Bearings, thousands of bearings on these machines need to be oiled. Somebody needs to physically do that and I could go on and on.
Right.
There is not going to be a way that they're going to get past physically going out there and maintaining all this equipment. It's just,
I mean, isn't there a critical mass of AI creating its own robots to do maintenance, like that movie WALL-E from Pixar, where they had the robots doing the maintenance, and when something was wrong, it would come out and do it. I mean, it's how far away are we from that is a big question too. But I kind of think Stephen's on the right track. Is it an inevitability that these machines get so smart that humans aren't required to be in whatever process they do, because they're going to create machines that require no human intervention?
Right.
Well, to do that, the machines have to become sentient. And so I'm fond of saying that means that we're going to get to the point where we create a C-3PO robot that walks around the production line and does all these physical things. I think, I'm really down on that, because I don't see that they're ever going to simulate the human brain in terms of capabilities, or a machine is ever going to become sentient,
Right.
Yeah, the spark. No, on the other side of that, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Intuitively, I want to agree with the idea that there's something special about a human being that cannot be replicated in any sort of digital technology. But how far does that go is a big question, I think. And you were talking about the idea that the people developing AI, we're talking about the Amazons, Microsoft, Facebook, Google, they're spending $200 billion in the next year, on AI alone, and they're the giants. Plus you've got OpenAI in that mix, spending their money. So, what are you seeing they care, their thoughts on the workforce at all? Are they headed straight first into replacing the workforce without any care about what damage it may do?
I think they are. I think that they and most of the multinational corporations are all focusing on eliminating people with this thing, but they're not really focusing on the practical aspects. And I get back to the automatic production line that those, as you mentioned earlier, they're going to require intuitive, creative people that are really well trained to keep them operating. I don't see ever a robot maintaining other robots. It's
not to the level. I mean, yeah, I was just doing some research on ASML and their extreme ultraviolet machines that create chips. And those machines, $380 million per machine. It weighs as much as 2 planes, and it does require human beings to assemble this thing, to maintain it, right, to adjust it slightly as it's in operation of over 30 years. It requires human intervention.
There you go. Now, say on that kind where they're doing large scale integration, they're trying to make circuits now that are 8 nanometers or something.
3. They're down to 3 at mass scale.
Okay, and if anything gets shuffled or anything, the vibration of the machine is off, and it's 12 nanometers rather than 3. That's a big problem. Are they ever going to make that machine completely hands off, where right, nobody needs to be around?
But you don't need to eliminate the entire workforce. Even if AI is threatening 80% of factory worker jobs, that's significant. I mean, 20% would be significant.
Yeah, and they are threatening.
Well, if look at it this way, when robots came into Detroit, so to speak, right, the auto worker union back in the day, when we were all when Michael and I and John were growing up, Michael's still like 15, but when we were back in the 60s and 70s and 80s, Detroit had hundreds and thousands of auto workers doing everything. Right. Then the machines came in and went from, say, 200,000 down to 100, down to 30. So at some point, AI is going to do the same thing with the workforce. And whether it's in 20 years or 200 years, I think at some point, yes, machines will repair machines that will repair machines. So we may not see it in our lifetime, because whether it's the technology's not there, or the materials aren't there, or we need to come up with a new discovery before they become sentient, I think it's going to be there. So we'll be ahead of the curve in 2024 saying that, and 200 years from now, they'll look back and go, "Ooh, these 4 guys were really smart." But that's kind of, I don't think it's unrealistic, because if we were born in 1824 and we were looking at, today at 2024, that 200 years, you jet travel, supersonic. So it's the same type of thing. In 200 years, a lot can happen. And I think you will replace humans.
That's true, but you can say, but so we're talking about the elimination of jobs that currently exist, but don't we also need to think about jobs that don't yet exist? Because every technological innovation has required a new set of humans to do different things, and we've had to upskill and change our titles, change our skills, and do something new. So why not in this revolution?
Right. Well, I've been talking about blue collar type work and why I think it's going to be difficult to totally eliminate them. But if you shift it over and look at white collar, now there I can see where there's going to be a huge loss. I found a Goldman Sachs AI study, and it estimated that 46% of administrative positions, 44% of legal positions, and 37% of engineering jobs could be eliminated by AI. Wow. And I had lunch with the president of a company last week. They have 7 plants around the world. He has established a big office in India to hold 100 people, because India's wage rates are 1/10 of ours. Yeah. And his view is he's going to use them to do accounting, to do to do design engineering, which is now done in the plants, and all these white collar jobs in this center, and they're with cheap people. That's his intention, and I think that's where it's going. And I do see where the white collar people are in real trouble.
Yeah.
And if it's these kinds of numbers, you're talking about millions of workers.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the phrase that I've heard many times since OpenAI really got out there and people started paying more attention to it is that it's not that AI, at least in the next phase, it's not that AI is going to take your job, but it's humans that are using AI that are going to take your job. How long will that be the case, I wonder?
Till it happens, or
no? That how long will it be the case where humans plus AI are going to be the dominant force as opposed to just purely AI doing everything? I mean, how long do we have?
If you look at the one company which we interviewed, Hero, right? In call centers, that's what's happening now, right? They're using AI with humans to do a job.
Right.
At some
Boy,
point,
and I hate it. I
yeah,
hate
right?
the call center.
We all hate
Right.
it.
But we all do. But listen, it pays the bills. But at the end of the day, though, at some point, if you keep not training AI the way they do it today with books and the Excel spreadsheets, but really train it, which is what some of these companies are doing, have become almost, for lack of a better term, human. Then at some point, the AI is going to be able to have a dialogue with whoever and maybe be more empathetic as if you will, like in the medical side. And at some point then as an employer, you're looking at it like, well, instead of having, say, 50,000 people at my call center, I can have 5,000 people. But as I said earlier, if we're going to eliminate jobs, and I say this all the time on the boards I sit on, I'm okay with that. We'll make more money. However, what are we going to do with these people? Like, you can't just throw them out to the street. And trust me, with the election coming up, if depending on who gets in, they're going to throw these people out to the street. So you're really going to just have two classes of people. You're going to have very wealthy people and everybody else.
Well,
And
that's been
going to be a
happening for
problem.
40 years. Michael's written about that.
Right.
That's
I know that, but that's my point. But now it's getting to a point where people can't afford to do things. And that's why you see like people going to San Francisco and stealing under $900. Apparently you don't go to jail. But my point, at some point when, say, 30 or 300 million people want to take a picnic, you're not stopping them. You know what I mean? The police can't afford to live. The military can't. Like all these. So at some point, what do we do to make sure that everybody is at least at a point where they can live?
Well, how do you keep everybody? How do you keep everybody doing something that is at least
if you give them universal income? Yeah, I don't care if you give them universal income. Give them something so they can have, and give them good medical. Give them whatever, but give them something.
But that can so easily be used. I mean, if somebody is not doing anything, if a person is not employed in a productive activity, like it could be caring for an elderly person, it could be caring for your children, it could be cooking for the family, it could be working a desk job that maybe is going to disappear. But if people aren't doing something productive, it doesn't matter how much money you give them, because the issue is they're there doing nothing. People are not going to do nothing.
Yes, they are. People are inherently lazy. They get lazier every year. They want to sit on their phones all day. That's great. How much money do we need to give everybody to bring up so they can afford to feed and eat? And you know what? I don't care. What I don't want to happen is, as we make more money and we get rid of people, and if we don't have a plan for this, what's going to happen 10 years from now when, say, 300 million people are like, we can't feed ourselves, we can't get health care, we can't get this. And they're like, hey, you know what we can do? We can have a civil war. That becomes a problem then. All right? So that's an issue.
Well, John mentioned it early on in this conversation. It'll lead to inequality big time. We already have inequality, but it's going to expand the distance between the very wealthy and the average worker. I don't know where that's going to lead, but I think it's grim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think we all feel that. And when you think about, so what message would you give to the Sam Altmans of the world, the people who are really championing AI as the savior of society, as the opening of opportunity, untold riches for all people, what message would you, Michael, give to them as they're contemplating doing AI governance, doing new laws that respect AI, policies that respect AI?
I would. My feeling is to slow things down and to try to put more thought into what they're doing in these software programs. I'm, they AI has millions of parameters in it. It's like a black box
Billions.
where it could be that with the advances in software and in programming, and for them writing their own code, they get a black box that is opaque and nobody knows, really how it works. And you get yourself into some big jams. But I would say that the way things are really going right now, it's all the rage. They're getting a lot of investment. The hype is
half of all VC funding. Half of all VC funding last year went to AI companies, right? Or so-called AI companies.
Let me give you the idea of all the hype. There's a gentleman who left OpenAI. He has no concept, no nothing, but they valued his company at 5 or 6 billion, and he got $1 billion in funding. And I read this, and I actually spoke to a buddy of mine in Silicon Valley, and I said, let me get this straight. You're writing a check to a guy that has basically just because he came from something and has a name. And he's like, yep. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. That's like back in the day when PEs were like 16,000 and people are like, oh, pet.com, we're going to write them a check. It's going to be billions. It's the same type of thing. It's nice that it's all the rage, but you should have some sort of a plan. I disagree with Michael on one thing. I am very much of the Wild West mentality here. I don't want to put any restraints on AI. I'm like full steam ahead. Go ahead and destroy humanity because this is going to be a fun ride. And my friend used to joke, like always creates like, and he used to say, who knows, maybe we're AI and we destroyed our masters. And I always thought that was an interesting hypothesis. And I look at this as like, let it go, baby. Let it go. We've screwed this world up so much. Let Hal from 2001 come and be the overlord. I'm good with that. I mean, can't be any worse than idiots now.
I don't think there's an alternative. First of all, I mean, I am also of that same vein because I don't see anybody slowing down, and because it's an arms race. Because if one person chooses to accelerate the race, everybody has to, and that's exactly what we're in. We're in a race condition.
However, gentlemen, you may consider this. Okay. We may have inadvertently committed ourselves to riding a tiger. And once on the tiger's back, we may not be able to dismount. Mm-hmm. So what Stephen's saying, let's go full speed ahead. It looks like that's going to happen. It appears to me that we're going to plunge ahead with AI without any guardrails and sort the problems out later. And that's what happens with a lot of technology. Perhaps the most likely outcome then would be some murky mix of good and bad. And if we implement AI with no guardrails and just hope for the best, it'll be a murky mix of good and bad. And and what I see happening, like most technologies, we implement it, then there's problems, then we learn to fix them later. Right. But if Stephen's right and this technology is as advanced, we could be getting ourselves into some big technological problems.
Or the technology could help us solve the problems. I mean, people are actually banking on the idea that the AI technology will also help us sort some of the problems. For example, the report that just came out, a bunch of academics from China and Israel raised the red flag saying, look, all this AI technology by 2030 is the equivalent of throwing away 13 billion iPhones or 2.5 million tons of e-waste because the pace of change, all the old AI technology gets thrown away for the most part. Nobody's trying to solve that recycling workflow. But if you had a smart enough AI, couldn't it design a circular economy or a circular manufacturing loop that would actually take that e-waste and do something productive with it, if we had a super intelligence as opposed to just us trying to figure it out?
It could, but let's focus on some of the downsides of this advanced stuff. AI's language, as I understand it, they can do audio, image generating abilities. And it'll be a boon to online criminals and conspiracy promoters. They'll love this stuff. There'll be the potential of deceptions, hoaxes, scams, frauds is formidable. I mean, we already go through this every day, but they're going to have the tools where they can create your face and
simulate
and your voice and everything else. Don't you think that this is fraught with some future problems for the citizenry?
Well, so I'm gonna one of the companies we interviewed, you can't do that. Their AI will detect if it's a fraud because they're doing like 7 layers of security, whether it's your voice or your face. They are like making sure that you can't fraud somebody, you can't become that person, and they have the technology to check it out and make sure that it's proper. So I think it becomes up to the companies to put, to your point earlier about guardrails. I think there's always going to be someone who's going to try to scam you, whether it was back in the 1800s or today, where you get the robo call or someone calling with your voice now going, "I've been kidnapped." I'm like, "Good for you, be kidnapped. Send me a body part and we'll discuss," and you hang up. But I mean, I think that's where we are. And I think to your point, there's always going to be good and there's always going to be evil and there'll be something in the middle. So I think it's going to be up to you as a person or your AI to figure out if this is good, bad, or indifferent. And I think that's just going to be there no matter what. What do you mean? Come on now to what, John?
Look, we've had this naive concept that, that when we started with computers and software, where we never thought about security.
That's true.
From the get-go and putting it into the system. And we've paid the price for that for the last 30, 40 years, right? AI needs to incorporate security from the get-go. And unless, you got somebody with a stick, most of these companies, if it's not in the US, it's going to be in, Israel, or it'll be in China or in Russia. They're going to say, "I don't care. We're going to do whatever we're going to do." And we're going to, so as much as I dislike regulation, and I think we need to regulate it, because this is it's just not a little technology that's just going to be like, "Oh yeah, we can fix it."
It's almost it's like I mean, we regulate nuclear technology. Why would you not regulate a technology that's
and see how well and regulating nuclear technology? Yes, see how well that has gone. 3 Mile Island, Fukushima. I mean, I can go through it, but yeah, why don't we not regulate it? And my point is, because humans are stupid. I don't care if you're the smartest guy on the planet or the dumbest. You're just, humans inherently, we're stupid. We have no clue. Let AI just do it. And I go back to my point, and I know this sounds kind of dumb, but we've already screwed up the planet. We don't do anything to fix it. Leaders of the countries are dumber than the average citizen. Maybe AI can actually bring things into an orderly fashion, and where we all actually have a utopia where everybody can kind of just be taken care of. Yes, I know that's Star Trek-ish.
Yeah,
but
you
maybe
said
that's
it.
the
Stupid, and that's a stupid idea.
Yeah,
Come on.
there you go. That's why we need AI.
I mean, AI is going to fix everything. No, because this, if you enable a technology, it's like giving a gun, to somebody. Yep. Most people won't do anything bad with it, but there's enough twits out there with twisted minds that's going to do bad things. So, the same thing with AI. We need to.
Well, I think John's point about getting the guardrails in the beginning and not after, that's not happening. The way I see this,
true.
To Stephen's point, is we are rapidly accelerating in all kinds of areas with AI. There is very little, from what I could tell, effort at trying to set up the safety guardrails at the beginning. So what it's going to end up being, in my opinion, is we're going to develop it, then there will be problems, and then we'll fix the problems after the fact. That's what Americans are not into preventative maintenance.
Yes, or medicine. Right. And it's really funny. We're competing now with the Chinese. I mean, the Israelis, we're competing, but I don't think as much, even though they have some of this really interesting technology. But right now it's an arms race, for lack of a better term, with the Chinese, because they're really pushing forward on the AI. And I think part of the hypothesis is why we don't want to, like the EU's trying to regulate AI for everything. I think part of the hypothesis in America is we don't want to regulate it because the Chinese aren't regulating it and they're going to blow past us. So I think it's this next 12 or 18 month, lack of a better term, arms race in AI. And I think people are like, just go, do, because the Chinese are like, screw you, we're going to go do. And I think at some point, whether AI regulates itself or we say, okay, now we've got to this, utopia, and now we have to regulate it. But yeah, I think for the next foreseeable future, let's say 5 years, the regulation that's going to come down, as we spoke about, is too late. The cow is already out. The cows and horses are out of the barn. You can't close the door. And I think we're going to have to corral it in at some point. But to Michael's point, now we're going to ride the tiger. And you just, what it is what it is. And that's going to be, to me, as scary as that is, it's also going to be the fun part of the next, say, 20 years.
Well, but
see where we go with it.
Even Sam Altman, way back in May, said, went to Congress and said, "You have to regulate us. You have to regulate
Congress.
AI
Stop,
please." No, but he's going to, the supposedly democratic body representing the people, to raise the red flag and say, "Look, there's going to be a problem with jobs, and we have to figure out how collectively we're going to solve that." Now, nothing has happened since then, as far as I can tell. And the thing is, it is a social discussion that has to happen, just like going back to your original point, Stephen, that what are we going to do with all the people who are almost immediately displaced and go from $100,000 of income to zero overnight with no upskilling opportunities available?
Yeah.
But that's my point. Our government, the people we pay for and that we elect, I think that we work for them, not the other way around. Useless as tits on a bull.
Yeah.
They have no clue. They're not doing anything and they don't care because they line their pockets. So unless you come up collectively, and Musk is not going to help because Musk just wants to be a trillionaire. So unless you can do something to say, okay, listen, everybody is a level playing field and we're going to take care of everybody and we're going to do this, whether you want to work or not, don't care. Everybody can afford to live. Then you're going to have a problem. And the problem is going to come when 80% of the population is in the, I can't afford to do this. I can't pay for this. And we're not doing anything about it. I've been discussing this for 10 years as we've taken over things and we have to displace people. I'm like, what are we going to do to make sure they're okay? The biggest thing is, and Michael's first question was, is it people? The people always have to be okay. I mean, if you read a history book, when the people aren't okay, it's bad, whether it's for government or for business. As long as the people are okay, you're okay. You can keep growing and becoming richer and whatever you want to do, but you have to take them with you, not to your extent, but you have to make sure they can afford basic things and give them things. And if you don't, your AI is at some point, if everyone's out of work, then what are you going to do?
Well, the question is, how do you share? And Sam Altman said it too, not to quote him too much, but in the age of abundance the potential age of abundance that comes from AI, in the sense that you can have, some people can have whatever they want at any time. How do you share that? How do you make sure that all people can in some way benefit from that abundance? Right now, the wealth redistribution that happened and the wealth concentration that happened since COVID is unprecedented in human history. In terms of the top 1% getting leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the world. That's accelerating, is what Michael brought up. Where's the system that's going to redistribute or re-equalize this inequality?
It doesn't exist. It's not there. And so as I said, we're going to plunge ahead with this stuff until we cause problems, and then we'll address the problems. But let me ask you a bigger thing. In measurement, do you think AI will change productivity in the country, economic productivity in terms of, man hours, however they measure productivity? The internet never uh, produced the productivity that it was supposed to. In fact, my good friend Jeff Ferry, who's an economist, says the introduction of the internet did not improve U.S. productivity in terms of output per hour worked. It did not improve. It was 1.5% between 2007 and 2024, far below the 2.7% that we had from World War II, up until the boom. He doesn't think that AI is going to impact productivity positively or create more productivity measure. And that's the final measurement, economically, of whether this stuff is going to really work.
One, it's a terrible measurement to think that GDP is the only way that we should be measuring satisfaction or even productivity. But I mean, let's not.
Well, I'm not saying it's the only way, but it's a way, isn't it?
It's a way to do it. But even if you, but let's just accept it and let's say GDP is the way to measure it and is the right way to measure it. AI is already having positive impact on productivity, such that people can. I mean, with GitHub Spark, which was just released 2 days ago, it's a technical preview where you put in you just say what you want and it programs it for you. It gives you actual code. Now, this is a very early technology, but this is what we're gearing for, is that now any person could tell the computer what they want to see on screen and what they want the program to do, and the program will just program itself to do it. That would be hugely productive, right? Because then everybody who has an idea even can create what they want, and they don't have to wait for a $100,000 or more programmer to program it for them. I think AI is different, I think, than the internet. No?
So you're saying then with all these fancy new capabilities that will probably increase productivity per man hour worked. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm more productive in the 2 years that I've been using it, because I'm able to have brainstorming sessions that, as working at a startup, wasn't able to have because we're a small ship, and I'm able to put together plans that would have taken me days. I'm able to at least get the framework of it in a much shorter period of time. So I think in terms of that output, I think so. But then again, so there's one other side to it, and I think you were pointing to this, Michael, is that it's a competitive landscape too in terms of productivity. If everybody's using it, maybe Steven said it too, if everybody's using the same tools, then are you really going to get relative productivity? I don't know.
Well, look at it this way. Unlike our little world of investments, if I can program AI, which some people are already doing, but everybody now can program AI to play the stock market or to play options or to play gold or play currencies, in theory, everyone's going to become a billionaire. You can start with $10, and by the end of the week, you have 100. And at the end of the next week, you have 1,000. And at the end of the next week, you have 10,000. Because AI, with all the other AIs, you're going to be like, oh, it's going to go up, it's going to go down, buy, sell, buy, blah, blah. And before you know it, in theory, then everybody is wealthy. So, I mean, I think it can.
I don't know.
I mean, at some point, John.
No,
I mean,
because
good.
Because it's a market is two-sided. For every buyer, there's a seller. So if everybody uses the same technology, there's no buyers or there's no sellers. So it doesn't create any.
How does BlackRock do it with Aladdin? You know, doesn't Aladdin control like 80% of the
They
trade?
rub the lamp and the genie comes out. And they talk and Barbara Eden does a
I
little.
don't know. I
thing.
mean, AI, has its role. Yeah, the problem with regulating, as Steve points out, that China, is they want to use this as a way to even increase their competitive advantage and control over us.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it's a difficult decision.
The productivity question. If you look back to 2000 when the Chinese were let into the game, and we started really outsourcing. The multinationals outsourced by we lost 3 to 4 million manufacturing jobs just because of outsourcing. And China, it was that during that time that productivity fell to 1.5%. Now, who's to say that this generative AI is going to be done here in the country? My friend, the president, was telling me he's moving his AI is all going to be done in Bangalore, India.
Right.
So that's not going to contribute to productivity in the United States. So do you think that AI is going to be largely done in the United States, or it'll be shipped out like everything else?
Well,
if Trump becomes president, everyone's coming back, according to him. And a lot of what he says Congress has to pass, and we know how good Congress is, so good luck with that. Some of the companies we're working with are having it done in Vietnam, India, and other places because, they can pay, if you will, $100,000 a month for a team of X, where they'd have to pay $100,000 here, and they're getting better work. Eastern Europe, Latvia, the rest of those places. So I think it's going to be done globally. It's going to be done. I think AI will be developed globally, but I think the countries that will use it will be, if you will, the United States and China, because right now it's still that superpower race. And I think AI is going to determine, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, who the superpower really is.
do you think it's like the space race all over again?
Yeah, but with more
consequential. Yeah, more consequential.
I think the countries that will do well with AI developing it are the people. We go back to the physical world. It's about physics, and the people that have, or the countries that have the cheapest energy, electricity, are the ones that are going to win the race. Because let's face it, it's chips and data, and data needs electricity, and this
water.
is why all these big companies are racing to get small nuclear reactors, and even in Microsoft restarting 3 Mile Island. One of the you laugh, but there's nowhere else.
Oh no, I think it's going to be great.
There's nowhere else to get
Pennsylvania needs to glow again because you can't find it at night.
You can't get any energy with that's cheap, relatively cheap, stable, and clean. That's not nuclear. You can't do it with sun, and it gets cloudy. And you're hosed. You don't have the battery, so cheapest energy I think it wins the race here.
Okay. I think with all the technology that's coming out, with like the chips that we saw a couple of weeks ago that are going to use 1/1000th less power, I think that helps. I think the technology can't just be about we have the best AI. It's got to be about our AI and our chips use less power, and our chips do this and our chips do that. So I think there's a lot that ties into it. But if we're just talking to like what Michael speaks about, which is China, and you speak about the US, which is really what most people are going to be concerned about, not so much the laws. Like the laws, there's none. And our Congress is useless. And so is our government. So let's just forget that. It is going to be a race to see who can develop the AI that takes over, for lack of a better term, the world. And Sam Altman can preach to Congress all he wants about people and technology, and EU can do the same thing. It's falling on deaf ears. It is now going to be a race to the finish line. And whoever wins that race is your superpower, is say 2030. And it's that simple. And so it's going to be a race between the US and it's going to be a race between China.
Well, it's the race between, the ostensible democracy and authoritarianism. That's the race.
Well, we're going to have authoritarianism here and next year. So it's the same thing. I can tell you that. The orange man wins, my friend. I don't think I think the ostrich isn't going to win. It's the orange man.
You can move to Thailand then.
I'm gonna, I'm gonna stay here because I'm gonna be friends with the orange man, and then I can have my own little, my own little whatchamacallit, my own little town.
You can build a little city yourself.
There you go. I can build my own little city. But I'm just saying that's where we are. We've become a globe of I have to have more than you and not give back. And I don't want to mention any names, Elon Musk, but because of that, Now it's going to be a governmental, it's going to be a person. Like I said, these guys are coming out of OpenAI and people are throwing billions at them. And I read the stuff and I'm like, but you're not producing anything. Well, I think I have an idea. Right. But you're not producing anything. Where companies that are producing, people are like, oh, I don't know if I like that. You don't like it because you don't understand it, but they've got patents. So I'm fascinated by the stupidity of the venture capital groups and the stupidity of everybody in general when it comes to this. So it's just one of those things. I don't know. What do I know?
Michael, what else is in your article that you can give us a preview about?
Well, there's a lot of stuff in there about the downside. I'm particularly worried about the ability to increase the deceptions, the hoaxes, the scams, and the frauds. I think that this is going to be really benefit to online criminals. I think that's my fear, but it could also lead to more authoritarianism when you look at the ability to control populations like the Chinese Communist Party does with their people. I think this generative AI is going to really increase their ability to both surveil and control populations. So I think it'll be a great benefit to autocratic leaders. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely on the right track because, AI will be able to just monitor everybody's financial accounts, every activity that they do. They'll be able to. The government already reads your comments on social media and reacts to it. It's a huge tool for bad governments, authoritarian.
Just an example is 10 years ago, I knew that China had put software into the traffic lights and they can see the license plates or they can see people jaywalking and breaking the rules. And then the computer sends them out a court appearance or a fine. You take that and expand it tenfold, and you can see where surveillance will go in the future. I think this is bad news.
Yeah, definitely.
But we already have surveillance. Like when you go fly, right, with TSA, you have your known number.
They're
They
only
take your
reading our
photo.
emails.
They're already reading your emails. They already have cameras that send you tickets. So I think for your point on authoritarianism, I think it's going to be they're going to read. The AI can read quicker. It will figure out if you're good or bad. And if the regime determines if you're bad, then some nice gentlemen are going to knock on your door and then you're going to disappear. So I think that's where people are, I think, worried. But most of the American public or the public on the planet they're not thinking like that. They're just like, oh, how's it going to make my life better? Or they're scared because they read some articles in the Economist or this or that. So I think it's one of these things that, once again, we don't know until we know, but I'm hoping it makes things better, not worse. And you can use any technology for good or evil. You know what I mean? So
Sure.
it's a hard line, I think, to say what we really think is going to happen with it. I'm hoping that it does something phenomenal. I don't know what that will be, but I hope it does something phenomenal. But like I said, right now,
but hope is not a strategy, right?
Right.
Yeah, and unfortunately, AI will come up with a strategy, I guess. But I mean,
we're gonna have to
in our
ask.
lifetime. Yep, in all
Let's
our
go ask
lifetimes, we're going to be shocked. We'll be shocked
Hope
where
is
AI
not a
goes.
plan.
No, all I'm
Hope is
aware.
not a plan.
But
Well,
with AI, you can have one.
if you follow the Ukraine war, now they're using a lot of the drones, military drones.
Warming.
I can see a time where the AI sophistication will turn it over to the drone to make the decision on who to shoot, and there won't be any moral guardrails involved. Once you set it into the sky, it's going to do its job without any restrictions. those are the kind of things that really worry me. And
Hmm. Well, I mean, you gotta. So one of the ideas was to, I think it was some AI researcher said, look, one way to create good AI is to somehow instill it with values and principles as you would raising a human being.
Yes.
But
I don't
whose
know how you
values
do
and
that
principles?
programmatically, but if you somehow programmed in a concept of values and ethics and principles,
Right. But
then
whose?
like Asimov's principles, right?
Okay.
That's a very basic version of it. But
Don't
if you
hurt
do
humans.
that,
That kind of defeats the military drone. Don't hurt humans. That's kind of,
There'll
I like
always be a
kills. That
back
kind of
door.
kills it.
Well,
Yeah.
how do
I like
you
that.
how do you do that? Program in values. And
Yeah.
one thing I found online was is using AI in the criminal justice system, and it would be the software that would make a determination whether you were still on parole or would be released.
Hmm.
As near as I can tell, Michael, is the technology, we're in this gallop, into the future, and I don't see people really spending a lot of time on
no,
morals or
No.
values right now.
no.
It's all
I'm
about
in the tech industry. I don't
about,
see that
as
either.
Stephen said, getting billions of dollars for an idea. It's all about pushing the technology, and it's not about the people.
It's not
I
about the.
I said
There was-
in my final paragraph, let me read my final thought about how it is. We are a technologically rich civilization addicted to software solutions and averse to the people implications of our decisions. That's where it is right now. It will be interesting to see if the costs exceed the gains.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah.
It may.
What
It
do
may.
you, what do you think?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But let me just say something about your prison with AI. There's an article, it's either in the Economist or the Financial Times, as they were talking about a software, of course, AI software, that when you go to prison, instead of being there for 20 years, they put you in some sort of a thing, chamber, do whatever to your brain. So it'll seem like 20 years, but you're only there for like a couple of days, and it's supposed to rehabilitate you. So you come out this new, it's like George Orwell's
Saw
1984.
that. Yeah. No,
It's like,
Like
I
the
saw that.
Clockwork Orange,
Yeah, right. I
yeah,
saw that. And
yeah.
I'm like, well, that's it. That's interesting. So basically, you should write a book, and it happens. So it's going to be interesting to see that. But then I'm like, then what do we do with these people? So you're rehabilitating them. What are you going to have them write code and be a police? I mean, so the concept of what we can do with it is great. But to what you just read to your paragraph, it all sounds good in theory and hypotheses and principles. Now you have to actually implement it. And I don't think people really are going to implement it for good. It's like, oh, I can control someone's mind. I can do this. I can do that. I think it's really going to go back to how do we make money? It's all about, unfortunately, we're not a society that would care about each other. We're a society of I need to have more.
That's the
And that's just it.
financialization that John was pointing at earlier. I
Yeah.
mean, that's exactly what it is. It's because the greed is good became a principle that everybody seemed to follow, or enough people seem to follow.
yeah.
Let me give a real basic example. Out here we have to do our cable, we have Comcast. And I hate Comcast. They do just an incredible number of bad things to us users. So when you try to call them, first of all, they do everything in their power to never put a person on the line.
Mhm.
And when you call in for a question, like last night, I was watching my favorite program, and I get a blank screen for 6 minutes. It happens almost every night. When I try to call them, when you call them, they say, well, listen, we'll put the chat bot on, and the chat bot can answer your questions. And in chat bots and the AI, I would say that in the last 5 years, I've never gotten a solution or an answer to my question.
Right.
So
I'm a
I'm
chat bot.
hoping that AI improves this, but right now it's still terrible. You
Terrible.
cannot, you whatever, you call in, you guys all know that. You call the doctor or a medical company or something. If you can just get to Agnes, she can tell you in 30 seconds,
Right.
what you need to know. But
Yeah.
if you go through the artificial intelligence stuff, they never really, there aren't enough programmed alternatives, I guess.
Right.
But do you guys have Comcast back in the
No,
East?
God forbid. God forbid. I used to
They
have it and
are
I got rid of
terrible.
it. Oh,
And
I know.
you said, and it's all about money with Comcast.
Yeah. Oh,
They
yeah.
keep raising the prices and stuff, and the service is pretty much a thing of the past. And so I'm wondering whether with artificial intelligence, this stuff is going to get worse rather than better. What do you
Maybe
think?
not. I think it may get better because artificial intelligence done right, and right being the key word, actually can be helpful because if it can not, I'm going to say think, but not think, if you will, but if it can think and go and answer questions and resolve things quicker for you because they've trained it to do so instead of a bot that can do absolutely nothing because they trained it wrong, then I think you can go, hey, I have a problem. It'll be like, no problem. It can go boom, boom, boom. You're done and you're fixed because it can do everything for you. The problem is today they just trained it on an Excel spreadsheet. So it doesn't do anything other than say 50,000 commands it knows. It can't go past that. The new
Right.
AI, the things that we see that are coming out, they don't teach it that way. They teach it like you teach a child. Like they teach, this is a word, this is what it means, the next and the next. So it goes through an education process. So the stuff that we see is not the AI, not ChatGPT, not like how they train it. It is trained as a human. And so when they put it into place, it seems to do much better because it can actually almost think on its own and get you to a solution. So I think if we do that, I think your problems at Comcast would be done, but then Comcast will be too cheap to buy the new AI, so you're screwed. Sorry. So,
Yeah.
so but yeah, I think if it's done right, it will be helpful. I don't think you can teach it. Unfortunately, you talked about earlier, like morals and this and that, and what's right or wrong, because what's right to just say us in China may be wrong and vice versa. So I think you can give it an underlining, like this is kind of like, here you go. And then it's going to have to make decisions on its own. Especially if you have military drones or you have this or you have that. So it just depends. The healthcare ones should do something different. And so we'll see. But that's what I'm saying. I think the next 5 or 10 years in AI will be very exciting. And hopefully the Earth will still be here so we can see it. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see.
All right.
Michael,
well, that's
it's always
a great
good to see you.
conversation. Yeah, Michael, wonderful to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Michael, before you leave, do you have a prediction for Tuesday, or do you want to stay out of that?
Well, I'm feeling that it's going to be a real close election, but I think that Harris might prevail in this.
Okay, very
And
interesting.
I just think that that Donald has, particularly in the last several months, has done enough stuff to really arm people with a lot of reservations. And when they go into that booth to make their X,
Right.
they're gonna be real hesitant to go for him because he's made it pretty clear, what his administration is going to be. Right. I think that people will step back, and enough of them will not vote for him, and it'll be another squeaker. But I think she'll prevail. That's my view.
Well, I think we all hope you're right. I read the article in the New York Times this week that said what Donald Trump's new government would look like. And every paragraph, because it would take a topic, whether it was justice or education, everything just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I'm like, this isn't good. So that's why I'm like AI full steam ahead.
Hypothetical.
Yeah, sure. Let's go with that. Michael, as always, it's a pleasure. Hopefully we'll see you in December and we'll talk about whatever the topic is you'd like to talk about.
Okay. I've got lots of things still coming up, so I'll send you some ideas.
We love it, Michael. You're the best. Thank you so much. And if we don't see you before Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. The best to your family.
Same to you guys.
All right, we'll see you soon. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care, Michael.
Love him. Like one of our
Oh,
best
yeah.
guests. Him and Guy Stan could do those two like
That's good.
every
That's
week.
good. We
That'd
got to
be
get them
awesome.
both.
I know.
Yeah.
We really should see if Guy will stay up late and have Michael
Right,
and Guy
right.
do the show together. That would be really cool, especially after the election.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be a good
See
show to
where-
have Guy and
You gotta
Michael
give
on
it, you gotta
together.
give it a few weeks, and then you see where it
Right.
settles. Yeah.
We'll get to see who wins. But
Yeah.
we should have Guy.
Well,
I
they
think we
say
should
it's
have Guy
gonna
and
take-
Michael on together. I'm going to let you take
can't-
care of that.
They can't count votes overnight anymore. Now it takes
know.
weeks to figure it
Yeah.
out. So, you know.
We joked about that on Vaguely True. I said, I used to be, I'd go to bed
Right.
and I'd get up in the morning. The Wall Street Journal would be at my doorstep. I'd pick up the paper and it's like, oh, so-and-so is president. Or I could go on, my phone on the Financial Times and see who was president. I said, now I have to wait 30 days because of all the courts. So I said, I'm not going to wake up the next morning and know who president is. So yeah, in December, maybe we have them come together and we ask Guy to stay up a little later since he's in Switzerland and have
Yeah.
Michael and Guy. And we don't have to do anything then. That'll be the guy. Like that's an hour where you just sit here and look pretty. That would be a great
We'll
show.
do our best. We'll do our best to look pretty. Yeah.
There you go. All right, let's
Yeah.
run an ad and pay some bills, and then we'll do some Lost and Found. What do you think, guys?
Sounds good.
All right.
Let's do it. Get the freedom and the flexibility of remote work in the lucrative tech industry. Bend your life around the world. Bandicoot is the premier course and community for thriving in a remote tech career. Join the revolution today. Bandicoot.com, official partner of the Lost Dollar Business Club.
Ever wonder how millions vanish into thin air, or how a single dollar can make all the difference? Join us on Lost and Found, where we dive into the wild world of financial mysteries. From misplaced fortunes to unexpected windfalls, we unravel the stories of people, companies, organizations, and even governments who've lost and found millions. Lost and Found, because every dollar has a story.
All right. David just keeps playing and finding stuff to keep making the graphics better and better. That guy counting the money, I'm looking at, go, that looks like me. So,
He's having fun with it. David's having fun.
He's having a good time. John's like, all right, John, what do you got? You've had a whole 170 hours now to come up with your latest Lost and Found.
Yeah. All right. So October, this morning, 8:30, we had the non-farm payrolls.
Right.
It came in at a shocking only 12,000, well below the expected. And October, of course, was revised lower by, as usual, from 254,000 to 223,000. So we're just 13,000 from a negative print. So we'll see how this all plays out for the election. But I don't know. I guess it's a
That and they'll
lost-
revise it next
lost
month.
dollar.
It'll be negative. It'll be
Yeah.
negative next month. They'll revise
Yeah.
October next month for you, John. Don't
Yeah.
worry.
I got one more though, which is
Yeah.
a little different. So according to the Blockchain Association, the SEC has cost crypto firms something to the order of 426 million under the administration of Gary Gensler, who's the CFTC.
Right.
SEC. No, he's actually the SEC now.
SEC guy, right?
Yeah. So they brought in a total of something like 104 cases against these firms. So
Okay. Well, the two president candidates are saying how much they love crypto.
yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, Donald Trump's new crypto came out and it like tanked.
Yeah.
And Miss Harris has been entertaining crypto, but all the crypto guys keep writing Donald checks, not Harris. So I would write them both a check. If I was a crypto guy, I'd be like, here's 50 million for you and 50 million for you, just in case. That's like, I'm hedging my bets. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see after the election what happens.
Crypto's going to stick around, though, I think.
I think so. But remember, all the governments have their own digital currency. And at some point, if they decide to get rid of it, it's a flip of a switch and your imaginary money goes bye-bye. And I don't care that BlackRock has a fund and this one has a fund. If the Chinese tomorrow and the Indian government, the Russians, the Americans, they all get together and you go, you know what? Screw them. And they go, click. Well, you can't do anything. You have no asset. It's all make-believe assets. It's an algorithm. as we call it. It's a crypto algorithm. So yeah, it's something to keep. Now, if Trump gets in, I think you're okay. I think he's going to keep it because he's going to use it for whatever he's going to use it for. He'll make a new Trump coin or whatever. So I'm that's positive. If Harris gets in, I'm going to see what her administration does. I'm not. I like
You
crypto
might
for what it could be used for.
switch, so you went from supporting it now and then boom, no, sorry.
Yeah. Like the minute Harris says it's no good, she's right, it's no good. But I think for other things like tokenization of assets and what, I think there's a lot of good things you can use it for. You just have to make sure that the government or governments you're playing with agree with you, because I would hate to not have it one day. You know what I mean? I think
Yeah.
Dubai, UAE, they're going to keep it forever because they're trying to be a crypto hub. There's other countries that are like Singapore and whatnot. So I think globally, yes. It's just the country you live in, maybe not. So as long as you can go somewhere else and get it, I think you're okay. In my opinion. What do I know? I read a book once.
Right.
So there you go. Michael?
Well, I've got one thing related to AI for us today, and something that maybe we forget, and it's maybe related to what Stephen and Michael were talking about today, is that there's a wild, they're saying it's a wild study in the Science Alert, saying that if you do achieve an artificial super intelligence, that's well beyond humans, that maybe that's what the great filter is that prevents biological societies from actually advancing, because by the time you create the ASI, the alignment from the ASI to the biological entity is no longer exists, and so the biological entity also no longer exists. So people have talked about the great filter plenty of times in terms of why we don't technically see aliens yet. Some people believe we have, some people believe we haven't. But if we haven't found if we haven't found a super intelligent alien race yet, maybe it's because they got AI too soon, and AI also took over, like it's going to do here.
Oh, if AI takes over, there you go. It'll be Hal from 2001, or
There you go.
now I
Yeah.
think, to your point, yes, and I think like because there's companies out there working on super intelligence. That's why I'm like, let the floodgates open and let it just do. Because even if you regulate it, if you have super duper AI, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to be like, yeah, we'll just work around it. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, you can regulate all you want, but you can't regulate it, because if it's smarter than you, how are you going to regulate?
How do you regulate something that's smarter than you?
To regulate AI? So I think it's going to be interesting. I don't know. It'll be fun to see. I'm looking forward to the next, few hundred years to see what happens. Being with the
Maybe
leader.
the politicians will use an AI platform to ask it to create the regulation for itself.
The
awesome.
lawyers who are working on it are already using
Yeah.
ChatGPT to
Yeah.
write.
Yeah, because they got fined. The judge in New York, the one law firm, was charging $650 for a legal opinion. It was written by AI and it was wrong. So the
Right.
judge made them rebate like a $3 or $4 million back to clients, which I thought was great. All right, I have two real quick ones. One, last quarter, BYD outsold Tesla, which I thought was very good. And BYD is, from what I can tell, makes a great product, and they're not made out of plastic and don't fall apart, allegedly. And Mr. Musk made a comment, and Bloomberg wrote a whole article that Mr. Musk was saying that he wants to cut, because apparently he's president and he's also South African. So apparently he's now allowed to be president in our country because he has money, but he wants to cut $2 trillion out of budgeting and whatever for America. And he wants to cut, and I read this and I was like, people I know don't read it. So their vote for Trump is like a vote for Musk, I guess. He wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and other social services, and get rid of departments. So basically, everybody who's been putting into Social Security, he wants to just get rid of it. He says, we don't need it. I'm like, great. Are you writing the check?
Politically not even a viable decision, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it depends who's running Congress and the Senate when Trump brings it to the floor, if they really do that. But my point was the fact that he would say such a thing, and everyone's like, "Oh, Musk is an idiot." I mean, it's great you have $230 billion, and good for you, but you can't. When it goes back to what I said earlier on the show, you can't screw with 300 million people. At some point,
No, right.
they're going to be like, you know what? Screw you, because you don't pay them enough. Whether it's your military, your police, teacher, people are just going to be enough. It'll be the pitchforks and torches pretty soon. So, wake up and smell the
He
pitchfork and
did-
torches, I guess.
he may be an idiot, but he did get that rocket to land itself.
That was
Yeah.
technology from the
And
60s
get-
that was already
and get
patented,
caught-
just
and
so
get
we're clear.
caught. That was,
Right,
that
realize that, right?
great video.
That was someone else's patent from the 60s. He just had the money to build it. So it's like his
Okay.
boring. He got the boring from 1893. That machine that bored the Vegas tunnel was from somebody else.
Well,
So
look,
let's think. I know Michael's sucking up just in
it
case
doesn't
Trump
matter.
wins. He's
You
got
know,
to
the
use his
technologies.
words.
A lot of technology is old, but you know what? Boeing didn't implement it. NASA didn't implement it.
I agree with that.
He gets
Yeah.
things done at a speed that nobody else does.
Right.
It would take 10 years to get one
Yeah.
rocket to do that. He did it in 19 months.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh no,
you
I'm
know,
not taking that away from him. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be rude. I guess I am in a way. Just literally must just shut the fuck up. Like nobody cares what your opinion is politically. Just because you have 230 million and you had patent trolls find you your patents and you can get things done expeditiously, I'm happy with that. But stay out of, you want to get rid of things.
I mean, that's the whole like, should celebrities be talking?
Right,
Should we
yes.
care about what celebrities think about politics? And
yeah.
I agree with this
Because you're a
First
good
Amendment.
actor, it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
is Bill Gates
I
a
agree.
doctor? I mean, it goes into the
Right.
whole thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm happy that he has a First Amendment, and literally you can say what you want. Like we can say, now until the orange man becomes president, then we can't say anything. But I'm just assuming. But I'm just saying, it's like I'm glad you have your First Amendment right, and this is what you want to do. But people are going to can turn around and go, you know what? Then South Africans that have citizenship shouldn't be allowed to own something. That would be my opinion. And then all of a sudden, well, that's terrible. So it's the same type of thing. It's like be careful what you say because you're not in touch with reality because you have 230 billion and you're not worried about X. So the people on Social Security and Medicare, they can't afford things. They're worried about X.
Well, I mean, if you want to land a criticism on Musk, I mean, he talks about, he actually said things like Americans need to take a haircut. We need to live more frugally. But the question is he going to do that? Is he going to do that?
Of course not. Yeah. So lead by example, pal. And you know what? You don't need 230 billion. Give like 200 of it away, and then we'll believe what you say. Until then, shut up. So, and we've invited him on the show, and Bill, and he doesn't show, and we would be very nice to him.
Did you get an answer
from Siege? I told the story before. I'll tell it again. I don't know if I told it here. David has sent emails to Harris, Trump, Putin, Kim Jong-un, and to Musk to come on the show. The response, guess who responded and said that they would get back to us within 6 months to let us know yes or no?
Putin.
The Ruski.
No, the Ruski responded and said, thank you. We will consider it and we'll get back to you within 6 months or so. I think we're 3 or 4 months into the 6. Everybody else totally ignored us. And I'm laughing. David told me this before we did a show one day. And I just started to laugh. I'm like, let me get this straight. Vladimir Putin is the one who, not him personally, just responded to you saying, his people are like, we'll think about it. Everyone else has ignored you. And he said, yep. I'm like, that is crazy. So for all these people, how wonderful they are. And we'll go on YouTube and we'll talk to whoever. You're so full of crap. And not that I'm a Putin fan, but at least they give his people credit. They responded.
He's got a better media team. Wow.
Yeah. Kudos to them for at least responding. Not that if he would come on the show, that'd be great. I'm not sure how that would go since none of us
just have an AI program that responds to email.
Yeah, probably. But you know what? At least you would think Musk would have that.
Yeah,
Mr. Look, I got a rocket ship that can fly to wherever it flies.
His Optimus robots responding to his emails.
I'm surprised an Optimus robot didn't come knock on my door and say, Mr. Musk can't make it. And it goes into its broken cyber cab and makes it down the block. But I'm just saying, it's just like, you would think with all of this, they would have at least, I'm okay with no. But it's like, we've been asking Donnie and Camilla and all of them to show, and they didn't make it, but that's okay. So, well, enough about us. Thank you for watching. There's a special live show today. There'll be another live show next Friday, but it'll be, I think, at 8:30 Eastern time in the morning. I don't know if we have any guests. Don't forget to subscribe and like. The rebroadcast of the full show will be rebroadcasted on Saturday morning. It comes out at 6 a.m. Eastern time. If you have any questions, please ask, or comments, feel free. Don't forget to subscribe and like. Did I miss anything, boys, or are we good? Who's next week? Mike?
There's no guest. There's no guest next week. So if we can find somebody, let's do it. Otherwise, it'll be us.
Oh, hey, Vladimir, this is it, buddy. You can come
This
on.
is
Musk.
it. You've got a slot.
Musk's right up the street. Literally, his Cybertruck factory is like 5 miles away. I could go meet him there. We could have a show. It'll be great. He could give me a tour. It'll be good just for the show. So we ask you, Elon, and you know his AI is watching the internet. So Elon,
maybe
come on,
you can go to he's building a compound for his 12 kids or something with 2 wives.
He has 12 kids?
Yeah.
You know, there's something called birth
10
control.
kids, I think, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, he's trying to repopulate the Earth, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe Mars. It's for his Mars population.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I think that's what it is. Yeah, it could be. All right, guys. It's always good to see you. Everybody have a great weekend. Thank you for listening or watching. Don't forget, you can catch us here on YouTube at 2OF Entertainment or wherever you get your podcasts. Look for Two Old Farts Making Noises. That's TWO, spell the rest. And wherever you get your podcast, you can listen to this if you don't want to look at John's beautiful face. And there you go, everybody. We'll talk to y'all later. Cheers.